Guys, we're reading Artemis Fowl, Chapter 8, continuation. A sprite alighted before Acting Commander Cudgeon. The collar is in place, sir. Cudgeon nodded. Are you sure it's tight, Captain? I don't want that troll coming out the wrong way. Tighter than a goblin wallet. There's not a bubble of air getting through that seal. Tighter than a stinks worms. Very well, Captain, interrupted Cudgeon hurriedly, before the sprite could complete his graphic analogy. Beside them, the hover gauge shook violently, almost toppling the container from its air cushion. We better blow that sucker, Commander. If we don't let him out of there soon, my boys are going to spend the next week scraping. Fine, Captain, fine. Blow it. Blow it for goodness sake. Cudgeon hurried behind the blast shield, scribbling a note on his palm screen. Memo, remind the sprites to watch their language. After all, I'm a commander now. The foul-mouthed captain in question turned to the hover cage cab's driver. Blow her, chicks. Blow the door off this damn hinges. Yes, sir. Off its dang hinges. That's a roger. Cudgeon winced. There'd be a general meeting tomorrow. First thing, by then he'd have the commander's icon on his lapel. Even a sprite might be less likely to curse with the triple acorn logo winking in his face. Chicks pulled down his shrapnel goggles. Even though the cab had a quartz windscreen, the goggles were cool. Girls loved them, or so the driver thought. In his mind's eye, he saw himself as a grim-faced daredevil. Sprites were like that. Give a fairy a pair of wings and he thinks he's God's gift to women. But Chick's verbal, ill-fated quest to impress the dames is, once again, another story. In this particular tale, he serves only one purpose, and that is to melodramatically push the detonate button, which he does with great aplomb. 24 controlled charges detonate in their chambers, driving 24 alloy cylinders out of their mouths at over 1,000 miles per hour. Under impact, each bar pulverized the contact area plus the surrounding 15 centimeters, effectively blowing the door off its dang hinges. As the captain would say, when the dust settled, the handlers winched back the containment wall inside the cage and began hammering the side panels with the flats of their hands. Cudgeon peeped out from behind the blast shield. All clear, Captain. Just a dang second, Commander. Chicks, how are we doing? Chicks checked the cab's monitor. He's moving. The hammering is spooking him. The claws are coming out. My, he's a big sucker. I wouldn't want to be that recon babe if she gets in the way of this. Cudgeon felt a momentary pang of guilt, which he dispelled with his favorite daydream, a vision of himself sinking into a beige velour council seat. The cage heaved violently, almost dislodging Chicks from his seat. He held on like a rodeo rider. Whoa, he's on the move. Lock and load, boys. I have a feeling that any second we're going to be getting a cry for help. Cudgeon didn't bother locking and loading. He preferred to leave that sort of thing to foot soldiers. The acting commander considered himself too important to be risked in an insecure situation. For the good of the people in general, it was better he remain outside the op zone. Butler took the stairs 4 at a time. It was possibly the first time he had ever abandoned Master Artemis in a time of crisis. But Juliet was family, and there was obviously something seriously wrong with his baby sister. The fairy had said something to her. Now she was sitting in the cell, giggling. Butler feared the worst. If anything were to happen to Juliet, he didn't know how he'd live with himself. He felt dribble of sweat slide down the crown of his shaven head. The whole situation was shooting off in bizarre directions. Fairies, magic, and now a hostage loose in the manor. How could he be expected to control things? It took a 4-man team to guard the lowliest politician but he was expected to contain this impossible situation on his own. Butler sprinted down the corridor into what had until recently been Captain Short's cell. Juliet was sprawled on the cot, enraptured by a concrete wall. "What are you doing?" he gasped, drawing the Sig Sauer 9mm with practiced seize. His sister barely spared him a glance. "Quiet, you big ape. Louis the Love Machine is on. He ain't so tough. I could take him." Butler blinked. She was talking gibberish, obviously drugged. "Let's go, Artemis. Wants us upstairs in the situations room." Juliet pointed a manicured finger at the wall. "Artemis can wait. This is for the Intercontinental title, and it's a grudge match. Louis ate the Hogman's pet piggy." The manservant studied the wall. It was definitely blank. He didn't have time for this. "Right, let's go," he growled, slinging his sister over a broad shoulder. "No, you big bully," she protested, hammering his back with tiny fists. "Not now, Hogman. Hogman." Butler ignored the objections. Settling into a loping run, who the heck was this Hogman's person? One of her boyfriends, no doubt. He was going to keep closer tabs on callers to the lodge in the future. "Butler, pick up." It was Artemis on the handheld. Butler jiggled his sister up a foot so he could reach his belt. "Lollipops," barked his employer. Say again? I thought you said, get out of there. Take cover, take cover, take cover. The military term didn't sound right coming out of Master Artemis' mouth, like a diamond ring in a lucky bag. "Take cover." "Yes, Butler. Cover. I thought speaking in primal terms would be the quickest route to your cognitive functions. Obviously, I was mistaken. That was more like it." Butler scanned the hall for a nuke to duck into. Not more choice. The only shelter was provided by the suits of medieval armor punctuating the walls. The manservant ducked into the alcove behind a 14th century knight, complete with lance and mace. Juliet tapped the breastplate. "You think you're mean? I could take you with one hand." "Quiet," hissed Butler. He held his breath and listened. Something was approaching the main door. Something big. Butler leaned out far enough to get one eye on the lobby. Then you could say that the door exploded, but that particular verb doesn't do the action justice. Rather, it shattered into infinitesimal pieces. Butler had seen something like this once before, when a Force 7 earthquake had ripped through a Colombian drug lord's estate, seconds before he had been scheduled to blow it up. This was slightly different, more localized, very professional. It was classic anti-terrorist tactics. Hit them with smoke and sonic, then go in while the targets were disoriented. Whatever was coming, it would be bad. He was certain of it. He was absolutely right. Dust clouds settled slowly, depositing a pale sheet on the Tunisian rug. Madame Fowl would have been furious if she ever put so much as a toe outside the attic door. Butler's instincts told him to move, zigzag across the ground floor to make for higher ground, stay low to minimize the target. This would be the perfect time to do it, before visibility cleared. Any second now, a hail of bullets would be whistling through the archway, and the last place he wanted to be was pinned down on a lower level. On any other day, Butler would have moved. He would have been halfway up that stairway before his brain had time for second thought. But today, he had his baby sister over his shoulder, spouting gibberish, and the last thing he wanted to do was expose her to murderous assault fire. With Juliet in the state she was in, she'd probably challenge the fairy commandos to a tag wrestling match. And though his sister talked tough, she was just a kid. Really, no match for trained military personnel. So Butler hunkered down, propped Juliet against the tapestry behind his suit of armor, and checked his safety catch. Off. Good. Come and get me, fairy boys. Something moved in the dust haze. It was immediately obvious to Butler that the something wasn't human. The manservant had been on too many safaris not to recognize an animal when he saw it. He studied the creature's gait, possibly simian, similar upper body structure to an ape, but bigger than any primate Butler had ever seen. If it was an ape, then his handgun wasn't going to be much of use. You could put 5 rounds in the skull of a bull ape, and he'd still have time to eat you before his brain realized he was dead. Alright, love ya. I'm going to stop right there.